and we're going to talk about the Secretary of the Interior guidelines. And this is, our building program came in bigger than the existing square footage that's available in the existing town hall. This was a building program that was brought together with all end users and stakeholders, and it is a community-based building program. So, next slide, please. So we are being respectful of the existing building by following these are, if you were to take all of the recommendation of the National Register of Historic Places, the Secretary of the Interior, and distill them down, they pretty much come to these 6. 3 are recommendations of what you should do, and 3 are things you should avoid. So the first is avoid or put any new additions on less seen elevations in inconspicuous locations. The National Register and the Secretary of the Interior strongly recommend a small hyphen in between the existing building and any new addition that's attached to it. And the other part of that is to pull your building back from the historic building planes and to show deference to the existing building. The first bullet point for not recommended surprises a lot of people, but the National Register and the Secretary of the Interior do not want a new addition or a new construction to match the existing. They want the original to stand alone. As Chris said, they don't build them like this anymore to get the detail and the construction right to match the existing. It's not something that would happen today. And so any new addition needs to be of the time that it was designed and built, and yet respectful to the existing building. There is a concern from the Secretary of the Interior that when we start to make the new and old come together, it's hard to understand the original and show the respect to the original versus the addition. So the other thing the National Register...
Mark, the building committee went mute again.
Can you hear me now?
How about now?
How about now? Can I be
You're
heard?
back.
I'm back?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Back there.
So another item is character defining features. The existing building, the existing town hall, has so much great wood detailing. It's part of the stick style. The detailing up the bell tower alone, it just goes from horizontal to vertical to these little wood medallions with holes drilled in them. They're very unique elements. So those are most definitely character defining features. And the National Register wants to avoid tampering with those and to avoid eliminating them and removing them. So that's the other thing. The last is that the addition should not overpower and should not be too diminutive compared to the existing building. And so that's where we are. We are following the recommendations and we are avoiding the things not recommended. So I'm going to talk about a couple of award-winning projects that show this in action. This is the West Branch Library in the town of Somerville. Again, this building, they put the addition in a very inconspicuous location, and they put it off of the side near what used to be a loading area. you can see that they kept the cornice and the dentils, and they left this, this impressive amount of woodwork and fenestration alone, and they tucked the building below, and they went into the side there.
Get over, George.
That way they avoided eliminating and damaging and removing the character-defining features of this. And then another part is the addition should clearly be differentiated from the existing building. And you can see that here as well, that the original building with that great arched reading room it's very clear which is current, which was built more recently, and which is from the late 1800s. Next, please. Next, this is the Woburn Public Library in Woburn. This shows both the hyphen that the National Register looks for, but it also shows, while this edition is quite large, they've tucked one floor below grade. So it's smaller than this is an H.H. Richardson building, if there are architect geeks in the place here. So that's a great, fantastic building. And they are set back from the wall plane.
So we've been saying hyphen, but that's kind of a fancy word of saying a connector.
Right.
That little connector is what we're talking about.
Right.
So we're not engaging the whole main building with the addition, but there's a small connector, and then the addition. That's one, Secretary of Interiors likes that, because if you ever want to remove the addition, it's easier to remove it later and not affect the historic building.
And then, I think there's one more. So they do reference the original building in that they provide this rusticated stone base throughout that wraps around, and that makes reference to the H.H. Richardson front building. And their open voids match these, the fenestration. And then the last image that we have is talking about how to not remove the character-defining features. These openings were originally windows, and they simply removed the stone at the base and provided a new surround. And you have this great connection between the old and the new. And so the other thing that they did is where they connected the roof, they again went direct, just right above where the gutter was. And they tucked it right over so that they kept that great cornice and stonework that exists. So this is showing how the Secretary of the Interior standards come into real-life buildings and in a good way. These are good examples. The scale of this is much larger than the Brimfield project, but the West Somerville Library is much closer to the scale that we're looking at. So are there questions about historic considerations? Anything online from teams? Anything in the room? Okay.
I'd be remiss if I didn't say something. We have the time, so one of the concepts behind the historic considerations, we're talking a lot about this building. It's a great building, it's robust, it's worthwhile, it's a town asset, and we learned quite a bit about the Secretary of Interior standards that frankly, we weren't aware that there were so many different standards. The consultants brought in some preservation experts to talk about this with their team to really get an understanding of what would make the most sense. And we're going to talk about this 1932 addition again, and why we're getting to these concepts of addition. But I will tell you, one of the other things that has come up, because again, we have all the same concerns that everyone else has, which is, well, do we have to do this? Can we do this aspect of it? Can we do that aspect? It doesn't matter what scope of work you're looking at with this building, this asset that we own as a town. If we were to place windows, for example, they have to meet those standards. If we were to do something with this building, they have to meet those standards. If they don't meet those standards, then we risk the historic district. That's the problem. So what we're trying to be is very conscientious about what makes economic sense for the town, but also we have to consider these historic guidelines by the Secretary of Interior. Anything that we ever do to this building, we would have to submit it to a Massachusetts Historical Commission for them to take a look at. They would have to approve it. So these are all the things that I think folks need to hear and understand, because these standards are something that we can't just go necessarily and say, we're going to get someone to give us a quote for X, Y, and Z scope, and they're just going to go in there and do it on the cheap. We can't do that, because on that's not going to meet the standard, okay? So I just want to be clear about that. If there are ever any questions that anyone in the public has about that and what that process is, you don't want to ask them here, but we do have someone up at the mic. You can always ask us again on the email that we're going to give you. And if we don't know the answer to it, we've got these great consultants that we're paying for the town. We'll go to them and we'll ask them the question, and we'll get the answer back to you. So please don't hesitate. But go ahead, sir.
It's Adam Oliver, 15 Little Rest Road. Do the historical aspects of it carry to the inside, or is it just the exterior? Because I know there's going to be a lot of changes to the inside, but didn't know if the state and federal were required.
That's typically, the interiors have less scrutiny given to them. It's a really good question. It's one we get a lot of the time. The biggest thing that both the National Register, Secretary of the Interior, and the MHC want to see is things that can easily be undone, which Tony spoke to earlier about being able to remove an addition and let the original show. And so they frown upon things that are so incredibly permanent that you couldn't undo it. And there is a little more leeway in that. So
They do understand that, like, we have current needs and technology. Obviously we need, so they understand it has to be a building that works, that people can go in and it's climate controlled, it's not freezing, it's properly insulated. So that doesn't mean we're scrapping the whole inside. You'll see we've actually retained a piece of the Great Hall. We're doing as much as we can on an economical side to keep some of the nature of the existing building on the inside, and you can see that in some of the...
Can I just make a comment too about that question? Because when we've been talking about mechanicals, we've been talking about the modernization, getting it up to code, all those things. Of course, we're going to have to make a ton of changes inside. However, again, balancing all these issues, cost, historic, one of the first things that we asked our consultants to take a look at is we wanted them to go in there and look at millwork inside, flooring, that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of things inside that are just great condition that we will be able to keep in the interior. Some of that flooring in that great room still has the square nails in it. I mean, it's very historic. So again, a lot of these things that we're talking about, it also translates into not just historic preservation, but construction savings. So,
yeah, I want to, actually that's a great point. The existing floors in the Great Hall are fantastic, and we would most definitely reuse them. The one thing Ned hopped up here to tell me that I had been a touch negligent on is that there are different levels of interior work that the National Register has guidelines for and has standards for. The most rigid and restrictive is restoration. And that is where you are peeling back paint and to see what the original color is. And you are looking to see if there was originally wallpaper there. And you also, if you get to that point, you're looking at picking a year at which the building, typically for a building like this, it's the year it was built, but for some historic residences, it might be the years that the person was president, and there is a time frame of, it's called the significance of importance, and then you are looking to restore it back to that era of importance. So we are looking at the renovation standards, which are not that high, but is more, again, rigid on the exterior, and less so on the interior. So, any other questions? I did want to say one other thing about this, and that is, if this project goes forward, part of the project will be issuing a project notification form to the Mass Historic Commission. They will have a chance to review what we are planning to do, and this is where what Tony started to speak to, which is, if something were to be of such, so out of scale or out of character or out of their standards, they may come back and say, look, you're putting this whole district, you're putting this building in danger of losing, of not retaining its contributing status. So that's part of this project as well. Any other questions? Anything online? All right, so our design approach. This is the building on Main Street that we are talking about. When we look at this, we look at two things first. Where's the sun? Where's the wind? And so the sun runs across the back of the building throughout the year, and then the wind in the winter comes from the northwest, and in the summer comes from the southwest. So typically, the one, I would say, the only thing Eugene Clarence Gardner really kind of missed here is that he put the entrance on the north side, which is tough. We try to avoid that as architects. But that said, it is facing the town green, and we get it. We get why he did that. So the next thing that we look at is, where can we add on to this building that is in an inconspicuous location? And so that is that thicker red rectangle. And that really is the area that is the least, first of all, that's the area of the 1932 addition. And secondly, it's the area that has the least impact from Main Street. So we're going to talk about, these are the existing drawings. This is the existing floor plans for Town Hall as it stands right now. And I'm going to go through and talk about how we're looking at this building as we approach the design. So the first thing is, there we go. So the 1932 edition, as Chris has talked a lot about, is not only a less desirable structurally addition, but it also has a ton of stairs. And the stage is elevated. And the challenge of all of this is that as designers, we have a requirement to meet ADA standards. So that right there, by keeping all of that, there are, let's see, five stairs for that stage, plus the elevated stage. The foundation beneath the existing floor is simply dirt. And it is, to save that would be very expensive. Not only is the construction not great, but we would have to do sort of surgical demolition to get to having a usable first floor. The other challenge of that is that as the building goes up, that roof comes in and makes everything much more narrow and lower head height. So by the time you get to a second floor, you actually can't use much of that space. If we were to, which is what we're proposing to do, install a second floor. So for those reasons, it really makes a lot of sense to remove the 1932 edition.
The one thing about the 1932 edition is it was built for very specific reasons. So they built that to obviously incorporate a stage. They also included a really interesting little privy on the back, so there was an indoor bathroom. And then, like Mark said, all the stairs, a way to egress to the back. So they did it for very specific reasons, just like we need in 2025, we need different programming in there. So that's the concept, to just remove that. It's not well built. It's going to be really expensive to turn that into not very much usable square feet. So that's where the concept came of just removing it. It's cheaper to remove it and just build something new. One cool thing about building something new is it also sets us up for any future expansion. If the town grows, if the town wants to do a senior center in the back, anything that you want to do in the future is built off a new addition that's modernly built.
So the other thing that you'll note here is that the existing basement has ramps throughout it. It has a series of awkwardly shaped rooms has very little daylight. It is very clustered, and that needs to just get cleaned out. Next. One thing that we look at when we work with existing buildings is taking what's good about what exists and reinforcing it and amplifying it. And so with this, there is a strong north-south connection on the building, and we want to retain that because it's already there. The Great Hall is designed in concert with that corridor, so we don't want to move that. Again, keeping the Great Hall, keeping half of that great double height space, and that would front Main Street. And then I think the last one is inserting a second floor into half of the Great Hall. So the Great Hall, for those, it's about 2,200 square feet. So we're looking at retaining 1,100 square feet of that. And as you'll see when we get to the proposed plans, it still is a very significant space for the town and within the building. So these are our proposed plans. And you can see this gray dashed line, and that is showing the existing 1878 construction and then our proposed addition. You'll note on all of these plans, we retain the north-south connection that we talked about, and we are providing this window here. As Tony pointed out, we're thinking about 20 or 30 years down the road, if the town wants to make an addition, there is an area that makes a lot of sense. We also, on this, we are proposing 2 main entry points. One at the south parking that would be primarily for staff, and then the other at the first floor that would be primarily for the public. So for the staff, you would come in to a vestibule here. We would have the veterans and shared office, so the veterans don't have to travel far. We have a small break room, a mail and print room, and then we have our IT suite of spaces. Part of our programming was learning what the town needs, and one of the things that we're looking to do here that already exists in the town hall is it serves as the central IT for the town, and so we are providing space for that to continue to exist. Then we have a stair up from the basement in the front, and this here, you'll see this stays constant, and that is at the southeast corner we have a stair, an elevator, and a pair of toilet rooms along with the janitor's closet. So for the first floor, you come in from the west side into a vestibule, and this is these at both the first and second floor. This hyphen that we've talked about, this is a service hall for the town. And so you have a clerk, you have the clerk with the service desk. You have the buildings department with the service desk. The assessor, the planning and conservation, and then we have a small conference room. We have a small cable access TV control room. This is something that we commonly put in our municipal practice so that they can broadcast on cable access anything that's happening in the Great Hall. We have a storage space that will allow for different furniture to be stored and brought out. And then we have, again, this direct connection for the clerk is also responsible for elections. So having the clerk being able to access that Great Hall space would allow elections to take place right here. As you come up to the second floor, again, we have that service hyphen here with the collector and treasurer having a service desk, the Board of Health having a service desk, the town admin and select board here, and the highway and cemetery. The existing second floor room that exists up there is just glorious. It's fantastic. And we are proposing trying to do as little to that room as possible. And we really think that that could be best used as both a flexible conference room and a room for the committees to meet and have a small hoteling desk for the 10 committees that the town has. And again, this is that double height space, so you're looking down into the Great Hall from these spaces. The other thing that exists up here is the bell tower, and that is, that's going to be one of the challenges of this project, is how we weatherproof that connection up to bell tower. And so these are our current floor plans, and this is where the design stands right now. I'm going to walk you through a couple of views of what we are calling a massing model, and that shows what we are looking at in terms of the mass of the building. We aren't showing all where the windows are. We're not showing all the materiality of the building, with the exception of the masonry. We are proposing that the masonry base of the existing building come across and help to frame this small addition. So when you see these white boxes, they will have the lines that denote the floors, but you will not see much else because we're still developing the look and feel of this building.
I just want to make sure everyone understands the entrances. They're represented by those yellow arrows. That back one is at the back parking lot grade, so you just come in at grade from the back parking lot into the building. The one on the side is at the level of the existing annex parking lot, so you're going to kind of see a bridge that goes across. You can park in the annex parking lot and come across at grade into the side entrance. That'll make more sense when we start showing the 3D model, but the front entrance remains as it currently is now. It's obviously not handicap accessible, that's why we have main entrances that are at grade and easy to negotiate.
So this is, if we were to hover above the northeast corner of the building looking back, you can see the addition and you can see how we have removed the existing 1932 addition, but we're letting the existing building be front and center on the town square. Next. This is the view from, if you were walking along Main Street, looking back, again, you can see how the masonry goes across and comes up. Again, I want to reiterate, we are not showing any windows yet. We are still working on the facades of how this building will look. At the back, you can see that this base floor, right now, you can enter where the existing, or where the former police station was, and you enter in, and you almost hit your head on that door, and then you go down like 3 or 4 stairs, and you're still in a really cramped space. So we've eliminated that, and we're lowering to have a real head height in here. This is that little window area that could be used for future expansion. And then this is the stair and elevator tower here. And again, this is the view from the southwest looking back. You can see that little recessed area. You can see the masonry come up. And this is the ramp that Tony was talking about previously. We are looking at providing actually a fire pump room beneath it and bringing people up and in. And then you can see here, we are putting our hyphen entrance in between the existing and new. And here is that masonry wall with a small cantilever for the new construction. And then last, this is from the northwest, so if you were standing across from the existing annex parking lot and looking back, this is what you would see. We have matched the edge of the eave with the top of the masonry, and that little bit above will be detailed a touch differently. So that is a tour of where the design stands right now, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, go right up.
Again, my name is Hamer Clark, 73 Little Allen Road. Could you go back to the floor plans that you laid out? There, thank you. I was noticing, I liked what your comments were relative to veterans being able to enter into the vestibule area there, but that's also a space that could be used for something else. Wouldn't you want to incorporate it somehow into the stair entrance?
To move this over,
No,
oh, sorry.
where you're labeled vest.
Yes, that's the vestibule,
If
entry
the
vestibule.
vestibule were more over to the left, then because that's also public space.
Right.
That would give you the space, the square footage there could be used for that purpose. And then I assume that your elevator mechanical room is going to be in the mechanical storage area somewhere.
Yeah, we're looking at that actually. Yep.
And the, I had one other item that I can't remember what, is if push came to shove relative to the tightness of space overall relative to balancing the program, the way you've got it laid out, if you wound up pushing it back to the south an additional 2 or 3 feet, that may be enormous in what your return is for a little in expense. Thank you.
Those are great comments, and actually, I do want to also stress that while these are the design schematics that are being created based upon a whole totality of recommendations, there's going to be an evolution of space-related issues. There may be an evolution of who goes where and the reasons why. We have to at least have the concept of being able to fit everything in. So there's certainly going to still be an evolution of some of those discussions, exactly what you're
Laying your groundwork.
Yeah, thank you.
Exactly, thank you. We have a position on the building committee if you would like to volunteer. So go ahead.
Jolene Ferrera, 93 Apple Road. So I got two very, hopefully simple questions for you guys. First one being, kind of like the previous gentleman said with the vestibule coming in, with that being at grade level, is that, I believe you had made the comment, correct me if I'm wrong, that that back parking lot would be mostly for staff.
Yeah.
My concern is, as a disabled veteran, with the veterans office being right there, are you going to be able to get enough parking in that parking lot with the size for employees and your disabled parking for us veterans to access that office?
Yes, yes.
And then my second question is with the great room getting cut in half, from what I'm picturing in my head, given the drawings, is it's going to be kind of right in the middle of that room where that second half is going to go towards office space. Is that
That is,
correct?
yeah, that's correct,
Okay.
yes.
Front half.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good evening, I'm John Miller, I'm Hamer's neighbor, I'm Howell. I had, earlier you said there was around 7,000 plus or minus net square feet.
Yeah.
What did that gross up to?
Right now, we are around 9,800 square feet. Yeah, close to 10,000.
What portion is the new construction versus the existing building?
We need to do that math. The existing building on the, definitely on the first two levels is significantly greater. I can say that the addition is right around 3,700 to 4,000 square feet right now. I apologize for not memorizing
But
the
that was
existing
gross-
building.
Gross square
Gross,
feet.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
And Mark, it
You're
might
about
be,
4,000 gross square feet.
Yeah.
if you don't have that number, do you remember though what the, because there was at one point in time we talked about, it was a certain amount of feet just beyond the 1932 addition.
It's
So
12
it gives
feet.
it-
Yeah, so
The
the
existing.
addition that we are putting on, so the original addition was 12 feet, and our service hall, our service corridor is 10 feet wide, and then we are going